there's squash, and squash helps students after they graduate from college get jobs. So it's obviously really helpful for everyone here, unless you're going to start your own business, which eventually you will. But yeah, he's had a lot of experience working in many jobs with like other tech companies and solar panel companies, and he's in the Navy. Also really interesting. But yeah, if we can help welcome him to class.
All right, thank you, Mackenzie. So I've got my awesome notepad here. 3 generations old, I found. So excuse me if I have to keep referencing it. Got another guest coming soon. I'll probably introduce her if she walks in. There she is. Former Cataffo. Anyway, so I was told I could come talk to you about failure and struggles. That's the topic, right? Before we get into talk about that, I guess I'll do a little bit of my background. We'll define failure because I think it'll help everybody. Everybody here wants to start their own company someday, I assume. You probably wouldn't be in this class if you did. Does anybody not want to start their own company? Feel free to interact with me. I'm not a total asshole, despite what some people say. But I wanted to be somewhat interactive. It is Halloween. I drug you with candy, so hopefully your blood sugar starts to go up. You do a little bit more interactive because I just don't want to stand up here and talk about myself the whole time. So Mackenzie was right. I was in the military. I lived in Hawaii for a number of years. Went to the Naval Academy, a little bit different than Cal. I can assure you that. I just made, it's my girlfriend Kristen. She went to Cal, graduated a number of years ago. Made her watch this documentary on the Naval Academy, and she said that looked like the most awful thing ever. And I can guarantee you it definitely was pretty awful. Anybody have any friends who go to service academies? What do they tell you?
Two of my best friends go to West Point and never.
Oh, it's even more awful than where I
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not fun. So I did that, and that wasn't fun. And then I got to be a submarine officer, and I can tell you that wasn't fun either. Anybody know any submarine officers? It's terrible. So I don't care what business you start. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You can be like shoveling horse manure. It would be better than what I did. But at least I got to live in Hawaii, and that was a lot of fun. Did that for a number of years, and then moved here when I got out. And I guess my entrepreneurship story starts in the Navy. I'll tell you this quick story. I was in Singapore. It was 2004, and we were leaving Singapore. And my captain and I were the only people at breakfast. It was probably 5:30 in the morning, well before anybody, normal people, were awake. And we were eating breakfast, and he said to me, he just kind of had this weird look on his face. I said, "Captain, what's up?" And he said, "I met the most interesting man in Singapore." I go, "Oh, well, like, what does he do?" He's like, "The guy for a living buys boats in Southeast Asia that are like all run down, drives them over to Thailand, hangs out there for like 2 or 3 months while they refurbish them for nothing, and then sells them to wealthy people in Australia, then gets a crew of guys, they load the boat out with guns and gas and food, and then they drive it over to Australia and sell it and make a killing." And I was like, "That sounds amazing." I was like, "Well, like, what's his job?" He's like, "No, he owns a company, like that's what he does for a living." And I was like, I had no idea that was even an option, right? We all grow up, we're told in school you can probably be like one of 5 things, and then you get to college and it's like, oh, there's like more than 5 things I can be. And with the internet, I didn't have the internet when I was growing up, or I like just started to come to be. It was like, it was worthless. You had to like plug into the wall, like dial up, and it made a bunch of noise when you did it, and it was really slow. You couldn't do anything on it really, but so you didn't know about the fact that you had options outside of being a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, and I think there were like 3 or 4 other things you could be. And so that was sort of my first segue into wanting to be an entrepreneur, because I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard. Way cooler than what I was doing. I was driving a boat around, but I wasn't making tons of money doing it, and it wasn't on my terms. So that got me thinking, okay, what can I do? And so I bought real estate out in Hawaii. I started investing in the stock market, started doing all kinds of different things. And when I got here, I knew eventually I wanted to run my own company, but I had no idea what to do. And so I ended up getting a job, absolutely hated it, quit 9 months later, so that was a rough start. So I basically moved here, had no money, had no job. It was 2009, anybody remember 2009? Great time to quit your job, by the way. I quit my job, so September 2008 is when it all fell apart. I quit my job in November. Everybody thought I was insane. I was like, "Why are you quitting your job? You have a good job, blah, blah, blah." And I absolutely hate it. Anyway, took about a year off. I coached lacrosse down at Stanford. I know you guys must be thinking that's amazing. But I coached lacrosse down there for about a year with a friend of mine, and then started working at a solar company called Longevity. and had a bunch of success there and was asked to run sales. I don't know why anybody ever thought to ask me to do that. I'd never sold anything before. And that actually worked out really well. I don't know, anybody know of Sanjeevi? Heard of them before? Yeah, it's a solar company. They're probably number like 2 or 3 or 4, something like that behind Solar City. Good company. They're about to get bought and / go public. So that worked out pretty well. And then I went and ran a software company for about 2 years. A company called Tech Validate. Nobody's probably ever heard of them, I'm guessing. Anybody heard of SurveyMonkey? Yeah, that's the company that bought Tech Validate. So did that for a number of years, and then at the end of that, I started realizing that everybody coming out of school is just like me coming out of the military. Really no clue. Nobody's ever told you how to run a job search. Nobody ever told you how to go figure out what you want to do in your career. And so I thought, what if I could create a program around that and then actually partner with companies who are looking for people who actually care enough to figure it out. And so that's how that company got started. And anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about how that's going. But anyway, we're going to talk about failure and struggle. The first thing I want first is let's define what failure is. Anybody have any ideas of what failure is? Somebody other than me.
Not meeting your own goal.
Okay. So we'll just draw goals, not men. All right, who else? What other definitions of failure do we have?
Failure to learn from that failure.
Okay, I like that. All right, what else?
Well, giving up.
There we go. All right. Anybody else? Let's get 5 up here. Sounds like a nice round number. Any other ideas about failure? What's failure to you? Like when you think of failure, or if you failed at something, what do you think of?
Exhausting all possibilities.
Okay. One more.
Wrong techniques.
Okay. All right. So these are all pretty good. And the message, you're probably not going to remember much from today. You might remember like this crazy guy was in the military, maybe lived in Hawaii. I don't know what you'll remember from today, but the thing I hope that you remember is that no matter what you do when you leave this school, whether it's wildly successful and is the next like Facebook or Snapchat or whatever company that you know and think is pretty cool, which I agree, I think those companies are pretty cool. No matter what you do, failure will be baked into all of it. And so that failing is going to be part of what you did. It's now, most of you didn't get to Cal by failing in high school, I'm guessing. Most of you probably did pretty well, right? Maybe fail a class in high school in here and end up in Cal? If you did, I'm impressed. You failed a class in high school?
Yeah.
Sick, what class?
Glass blowing.
What's that?
Glass blowing.
Glass blow.
I broke my arm.
You broke your arm?
And I failed the class.
That's a first, okay. Anybody else fell in the class in high school? This is pretty cool you got into Cal, by the way, congrats. So it is possible to fail a class and get into Cal, so we did figure that out today, so maybe you'll take that away. But none of us really failed and got into Cal, right? I didn't fail classes and get into the Naval Academy either. And so we're taught at a young age, like failure is like the most miserable, awful thing that can possibly happen. And we usually relate it to one of these things. Usually it's related to like, maybe you don't win a sporting event or whatever the case is, you don't meet your goals. But in business, I can tell you, having known several people that have worked at Google or in the early days, Facebook in the early days, Snapchat in the early days, all of those places, without exception, were absolute, complete clusterfucks at some point. All of them. The greatest product you've ever heard of, if you talk to somebody in the company, they will tell you it was a shit show at some point. And I can tell you at Sanjeevi, having been at the company when it was 40 employees to when it was like 300, it was a shit show. So, and we failed in it blew through money like you wouldn't imagine at points. And every company does that for the most part. So, no matter what you do, failure will be baked in. And when we look at these 5 things that you guys came up with, all of these are examples of failing, except when you're an entrepreneur, really like failure, if you do all of these things, the only thing really that I would consider to be failing is eventually giving up, right? All of these things you will do at some point. If you start a company, I guarantee you, everybody in this room goes and starts a company, several of you, 80-90% of you, your first company will fail. Like, you'll just go out of business, you'll stop it, you'll do something else, you'll pivot from the original idea. It will not go as planned. And so, the whole thing you should take away from this talk, and I'll talk about some examples of squash, I'll talk about some examples even with my other companies, is that failing at some aspect doesn't mean it's over. Okay? So, if we think of, I think of like Facebook, or maybe I'll use, can anybody name a product, what's that?
At Uber.
Okay, so Uber's a good example. And the only reason I can talk a lot about Uber is because the guy who founded it was a good friend of my last boss. In fact, my former boss was a guy who was the founding investor of his first company. Anybody heard of Garrett Camp, founder of Uber? So Garrett's first company was StumbleUpon. Anybody ever heard of used StumbleUpon before? It's pretty popular. And it's on Mozilla if you guys use Firefox. Anyway, StumbleUpon was Garrett's first company, and this guy Brad that I used to work with was the founding investor, brought Garrett and Jeff Smith down from Canada. And then Garrett goes to start this other company, pitches Brad on the idea. And the original idea, anybody know what the original idea for Uber was? Anybody? The original idea was to have a fleet of cars that they owned, and that you could push a button on your phone, and if you liked bananas, the car would show up with a banana. That was like the original pitch, and Brad was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And ironically, Brad and I used to talk about this all the time, but it was just like, because one of the things I learned about entrepreneurs is that if you work with somebody successful and they pitch you an idea and it sounds stupid, go back to them a month later and ask them if anything's changed. Because as you all know, Uber doesn't own anything except technology. So the original idea was kind of crazy and out there, but the concept of being able to get a car within a couple minutes, that idea obviously is the one that's done pretty well, to the tune of like $60 billion or something like that. And obviously Lyft, and there's a number of other ones out there doing well. So my original idea for Squash was what Mackenzie says, like, I'm going to create this program and I'm going to sell this program to tons of people. Well, the original idea, selling this to 22-year-olds didn't pan out that well, but companies love this. So I've ended up actually selling more to companies than I have to people. The program has really become this thing that is anybody out here who's actually going to get a job when you graduate, it's a really useful tool to navigate a job search because you're going to learn at least a dozen things you wouldn't have learned otherwise. And when you're going to get a job or you're going to negotiate, one of the whole part of this program is about how to negotiate. Anybody ever negotiated anything here before? What did you negotiate?
Like being able to go out to my parents.
Okay, that's negotiating, that counts.
I was talking about, I have to like negotiate prices with my manufacturer.
Okay, so you have a company?
I do.
Okay, I know there's a couple of people in here do, right? You do? Who else has a company here? That's like active, building it? Okay. So you've negotiated something before, I imagine, at this point, right? All of you? Give me an example.
Negotiated discounts with store owners.
Okay,
Like an employee's salary after they didn't work for a bit.
okay. That's interesting. So they didn't work and they still want to get paid?
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun, isn't it?
Equity.
Equity? Yeah, all these things are pretty important. If you've never done it before, more often than not, you're gonna leave money on the table. That's just, and it's like the first time, remember the first time you rode a bike? What usually happens the first time you get on a bike? You fall down, you get hurt, and you get up and you cry, and you go tell your parents about it. Same thing with like business. You don't know how to do something, and you go into the first time with somebody who's done it before, you're gonna get, somebody people would say taken advantage of, you're just gonna get run over. And so a lot of these things are things that I put into this program because I've watched myself and other people who are newbies at it. You just suck at anything you're new at. So this helps people actually prepare for it and think about it like an executive would. So anyway, that's the program, and I was like, I'm gonna go sell this. 2 million people are gonna line up and buy this thing, I guarantee it, because there's nothing out there like it. And about 24 people showed up and were like, oh, this looks pretty interesting. So that was like the beginning of my business experience. I was like, oh, that sucks. Okay.
What are you selling?
What am I selling?
Yeah.
I'm selling humans to companies.
Do
So,
people pay to be a part of Squash?
what's that?
Do people pay to be a part of Squash?
Not anymore. No. So that's where things sort of morphed from. Instead of charging candidates for a program, what I do is I work with candidates and I basically provide all kinds of different content for them to help them figure this out. And on the back end of this, I have companies who work with me who pay to get access to these people. And companies pay a lot more than candidates pay.
Is it a SaaS company?
So I don't really own, there's no special technology that I own or that I've developed. This is more of like, anybody heard of recruiters before? Yeah, so I'm on a mission to reinvent what recruiting is, because most people out there do recruiting. I worked with tons of recruiting firms before. In fact, that was my first job out of the military. Most recruiting firms, the thing about them is just like anything, there's very low barriers to entry. So just about anybody in here can walk out here tomorrow and be like, I'll be a recruiter, and you could be. But there's a few different facets that my clients look for in terms of like scaling a sales organization that I've got a lot more expertise in than the average recruiter. And then I also created a new model, like pricing and financial model around it as well to make it more cost effective for companies. So, and then also a new model around how to scale a recruiting or a talent agency. So those are the things that, like the first lesson I want to talk to you about in terms of like my 5 points I was going to talk to you about that I'm now way delayed to get into, is number one is you got to figure out quickly what your value prop is. This was my first lesson in business. And the only way to do that is you got to test it. And you got to test, don't just do what I did. My biggest mistake was I was like, I'm going to test this one thing for like 5 months. And then I realized after 5 months, I tested this thing and did this. I probably tested this one thing 50 different ways, and it sucked at 49 different ways and was good like one. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. And so then I realized, shoot, maybe I need to figure out how to change the model of this company and make money some other way. So the ideal way would have been go back and say, great, I'm going to test these 5 different things, 15 different ways or 5 different ways, and then figure out which of those 5 works. So figure out what your value prop is, and don't reinvent the wheel. So when it comes to your value prop, a lot of business owners think that you have to go out and like figure out a new way for a rocket to get to Mars, and that you have to build, every stage of the rocket has to be different than any rocket that's ever been built before. And if anybody follows SpaceX in here? So Elon Musk didn't reinvent the rocket. He's just reinvented a couple things about it so that you can reuse them. So with your company, figure out like, if nobody's doing what you're trying to do, by the way, probably not a good thing. If people are trying to figure out or people are doing what you're trying to do, all you need is like one little thing that's important to your customers to be able to market, and you can do everything else pretty much the same way, and you can be 10 times better and 10 times more expensive than the competition, and people still pay for it. So that's one thing, is figure out the type of the wheel, the aspect of the wheel you want to reinvent, but don't reinvent the whole thing. Otherwise you'll spend way too much money and waste a lot of time. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, so like, and I guess for an example, I talked about Uber before. With my company, recruiting is not a new concept, it's been around forever. The only thing that I reinvented is the pricing model and the approach and the system that I use to screen candidates. Very different than a traditional recruiting firm. All right, so that's number one. Number two, let me see if I'm still on track here. Nope, I'm way behind. All right, so number two is, I think probably the most important part, is you've got to maintain confidence when shit gets real. And hopefully I'm allowed to curse because I'm a sailor and I'll curse as much as I want, I guess. So shit is going to get real at some point, and it's easy to be confident when things are going well, right? When things are going well in life, everybody's confident. But when, like we used to talk about this when we go into combat and stuff, when we train for combat situations on the submarine, it's like, you know, when the seas are calm and everything's going well, it's really easy to be good at what you're doing and be confident in it. It's when shit starts going south that it gets really easy to start second guessing yourself, start second guessing whether you're going to do this, and it's really easy to do this. So the big thing is that stuff is going to go wrong. I talked about this before about Google and Facebook and Snapchat, all these companies. At some point, shit was going south. You didn't see it as a consumer, but stuff internally was a mess. I mean, they made a movie about what a mess Facebook was in the early days in terms of like all the just drama and politics and people leaving and people joining and Zuckerberg and his like disasters as a leader. Obviously, he's figured out a few things and figured out how to learn from that. But the whole idea is that when shit gets hard, like that's when you've got to figure out, that's when you're gonna realize if you actually are believing in what you're doing and committed to making it happen. Doesn't mean you have to keep doing the same things, Because if you were, then I'd say you're probably guilty of number 2. But maintaining confidence when stuff gets really hard is probably gonna be key to your success no matter what you do. So that's number 2. I'll just put shit gets real. Alright, so number 3 is, alright, build alliances. Who's got a company here? Are you any solo founders in here actually? You're a solo founder? Painful, isn't it, at times?
Yeah.
So what alliances have you built? That's number 3, is you gotta build alliances. Do you have any like mentors or advisors, or I'm sure you have like maybe a CPA or an attorney, or do you have any of those people? Not yet?
No, well, I have like friends who are friends that I trust.
Okay. How early are you? Are you like still pretty early? And
No, it's pretty like going.
so you're like doing sales and people are buying stuff and,
No, it's like a wait staff company.
okay.
Mhm.
But you're doing it all by yourself?
No, I have branches now, so like I have people.
Okay, so you have employees and stuff like that, okay. My advice to anybody out there is that if you're building a company, is you have to find people who've done stuff before. One of the biggest mistakes companies make is to hire people who've never done anything, and some people are gonna be smart and figure it out. Most people are gonna make the same mistakes that other people have made, and there's no reason to do it. So, I don't try to figure out taxes on my own. I mean, I could, it would take me longer, but I pay somebody to do that. I don't try to figure out the legal stuff on my own, because I think I watched one of the other speakers, it sounded like he tried to figure out the legal stuff on his own, and it was a total fucking disaster. And people are still trying to kill him and like chase him around and like collect money from him. You don't want that, like life's too short to have that, so don't try to figure out the hard stuff that you are gonna, like, there's people out there that do tons of different things. So the legal stuff, the tax stuff, you get that stuff wrong, it's painfully expensive. Painfully expensive. So don't try to figure that stuff on your own unless you get a legal background or a tax background. Another one is like, try to find somebody who's built your type of company. Doesn't be exactly the same one, but find somebody and literally just ask them for help. Ask them to be an advisor. Ask them, figure out what they're looking for. I found a guy who was a mentor of mine at Longevity. Turns out he wants to start he wants a board seat on like a handful of companies. Poof. That may work out really well for me, it may work out really well for him. So find people out there that have an interest in being an advisor or board seat. There's tons of them out there, tons of great ones out there. Find at least one, try to find more than one, and see if those people will help you. Because again, if I could go back in time, it would have been one of the first things I did. Before I even touched anything with this company, I would have found somebody who said, okay, I want you to help me not step in all the landmines that are just gonna waste my time. And time is really the big thing you get back, besides money. So that's number 3, build alliances. Alright, number 4. Gosh, I try to memorize these, but this is what happens when you get old. Okay, talked about this one before, about learning. You have to keep learning. And my example from this is that Mark Zuckerberg, the $300 billion company that Facebook is today, or whatever it is, wasn't built by a 19-year-old. It was started by a 19-year-old, but it was built by somebody who was bright and kept learning and failed and kept surrounding themselves with people like Mark Andreessen and Sean Parker and, well, at least for a short period of time, and other like people who've done this before and learned very quickly on the job. So, doesn't mean like one of you in here could start the next like $1 trillion company or the first $1 trillion company, but it won't be your 20 or 21-year-old self that actually goes and builds that. You have to keep learning, and it doesn't ever stop. Like I've learned probably more after college than I learned before college, particularly about business, because where I went to school, we were learning about nuclear weapons. We weren't learning about anything that's really relevant. So I was learning about navigation, nuclear weapons, and things, none of which I even remember or use today. So you have to keep learning, you have to keep going out there and reading, going and meeting new people. And I think the hardest thing to do is surround yourself with people that scare the hell out of you. Like people that you're nervous to be around, because they've done really well. They are people who have had a tremendous amount of success in what they're doing. Those are always the hardest people to surround yourself with, but that's what you have to force yourself to do. So keep learning. And then number 5, and this is one thing, I don't know, some of you may be thinking about this, is that if you do want to start a company, I would begin thinking about the type of life you want to have, and then figure out the type of business you want to build around that. Most people do it the other way around. They try to figure out the company they want to go build and try to build their life around that. And it depends on the type of life you want. If you want to be owned by your business, you can do it the latter. If you want to actually have a life that, like, in a business that fits into what you want to do, and again, it like depends on you. If you're the type of person that you don't care working 90, 100 hours a week, and you find a partner who doesn't care about that either, then that may work for you. Most partners who like to be around their partner in terms of like spouse or how whatever, usually like to be around them and spend time with them. If that's the case and you have a 100-hour work day and you have a 100-hour week life for business, like that's gonna put stress on you. And it's gonna put stress on your business, it's gonna put stress on your relationships. So try to figure out and design the type of business that you want. I don't think squash is gonna be a $1 billion company, but I do think that they can make 4, 5, 6 million a year, and if you make 4, 5, 6 million a year around here, you're doing all right. So again, it's like, and the other thing about it is the way I'm going to scale the company, I may be able to make $1 million or $2 million a year and do nothing doing it. Literally almost do nothing except provide a platform and a training and different things for people to go out and build their own little recruiting franchise part-time, which is what I've essentially done. So when you're thinking about building your business, think about the type of life that you want first, and then build the business from there. If you go to build a company and you go to like, anybody here raise money? Or try to raise money yet? So you're raising money right now?
Well, I did,
You did?
like 4 years ago,
Okay, from,
family.
okay. So you've already been down that route?
Yeah.
Totally fine. If you're gonna go, anybody plan on going the VC route here? Anybody know any VCs in here? Or raised money before from a VC? Nobody?
What's a VC?
Venture capital, sorry.
Okay.
So I can tell you with some experience, not having raised money personally, but been at VC-backed companies, like, it's a different game than the game that I'm playing. The game I'm playing is self-funded. I sort of go at my own pace. I don't know if anybody can fire me. If you go to raise money from venture capitalists and you have somebody on your board who owns a pretty good stake in your company, in that paperwork somewhere that they signed, there will be something in there saying they can fire you if you are underperforming. So immediately, the second that you go do that, it's really no longer your company, whether you believe that or not. A lot of founders out there found that out the hard way, is that if you go to raise money through institutions like a venture capital firm, that's a different game. You can raise money through friends and family and angels and stuff like that, and they, most of the time, they won't take a board seat. And you can still do that and build a successful company, but if you're gonna go out and go after like the $1 billion plus markets, the 10, $20 billion plus markets, you're probably gonna be raising money from the VC. And I can tell you that pretty soon, depending on how you do it, how good you are negotiating, you'll be looking at the cap table going, how the hell did this happen? Why do I only own 3% of my company? And why are these VCs talking to each other about firing my ass? Like, how the hell did I get here? And yet this was my idea, this was my baby, this is the thing I started to put blood, sweat, and tears into, and now these analysts or investors want to take it in a whole new direction. So all I'm saying to you is think first, talk to people who have run venture-backed companies, talk to people who have self-funded companies. They're very different lifestyles, very different type of businesses, and they're usually going after two very different markets. Some businesses can't not be venture-backed. I'll give you an example. YouTube would have died probably in month 4 if it wasn't venture-backed, because at the time, storage actually cost a ton of money, and videos, as you know, take up a ton of bandwidth, and a ton of server space. So they had to basically have somebody fund all the servers and stuff like that they were on to keep the website up. So that thing would have died in 4 months without it. Google, Yahoo, they're going after probably the biggest market on earth. And so if you're going after a big market, you're going to need VC money, more than likely. So anyway, all that to say is think about your life, the type of life you want, what matters to you, what's important to you. It might be family, it might be friends, it might be success, it might be you want 10 vacation homes, I don't know what it is for you, but figure that out. If you figure that out first and then build a business, you're going to have a much different experience than if you try to do it the other way around.
Do you think that even doing that you can ever avoid having to put all of your time into your business in the very early days?
No. unavoidable. Expect that when you start a company, like, you're gonna be putting a lot of time into it. I mean, at the end of the day, particularly if you're going after a fast-moving, like if you're doing a technology play, tech plays usually are very fast-moving, they evolve much faster than the play I'm doing because it's not really tech-heavy. So if you're doing something technology, you gotta move very fast. Markets tend to move and evolve very fast that way, so you're gonna have to be working your butt off. But you can plan things out so that at some point you don't have to be doing that. That's all I'm saying. Anyway. So that's sort of my talk. I didn't really talk about my failures and struggles, but I guess I'll talk a little bit about them, and then we'll open up for questions. So I talked a little bit about, so we'll go back to this. Really, I can tell you that I've achieved this, multiple times in the last year and a half since I started this company. Multiple times. So I guarantee you will fail at some point. You will do one of these things. Now, the key is I haven't given up yet, and I still think that there's hope to build a $5, $6, $7, $8 million company, which, again, isn't going to make the front page of the Wall Street Journal, but I don't care about that, because that doesn't really matter. I know people who've built really successful companies, and companies everybody knows about, and they're miserable. So, that's not the goal. So, but again, you have to figure out what's most important to you, and then I think expect to do these things. Expect even when things are going well that you're going to be pulling your hair out, going, I can't believe this sucks. It's like I want to quit. But so long as you don't really do this, and even if you do that, even if you give up on a business, it doesn't mean you give up. Squash may ultimately fail. It doesn't matter because I'll probably start another company. I'll learn, and I'll start something else that will work. So as long as you've made up your mind, you're going to figure it out, and you're going to keep learning. You're going to start something that works. You might run. I mean, would we all agree that if I failed? If I started and shut down 4 companies, but my 5th one was like $1 billion company, would we say I was a failure?
No.
Exactly. Nobody remembers any of that stuff. There's all types of lessons out there about people who started companies before. Steve Jobs started a company. I heard somebody talk about Steve Jobs when I was walking over here. Steve Jobs started a company called Next, which was a total disaster. Nobody really talks about that. Nobody cares. Because we care about the things he did really well. So don't worry about any of this stuff. You have to decide that at some point, if failure sucks and you absolutely hate it and you hate failing, then I tell you right now, don't go be an entrepreneur. I'd say I don't know what you're gonna do, even teachers. Like I know teachers that bang their heads against the wall because they got students, they feel like they're failing as teachers. Failure will be part of everything you do. So, I know that may sound depressing, but the good news is everybody's out there doing it, so don't feel like you're the only one. And that's it. That's all I gotta say about that. Anyway, hopefully that wasn't too boring. Any questions? Yeah.
So when you're building a company and you said you wanted to hire people that are experienced, how do you convince people to drop what they're doing if they're experienced and join you if your company's so new?
That's a good question. A couple different ways.